for my grandchildren, I would certainly do it. But I would never change my grandchildren for the world. Hello, I'm Brenda Dziadaszek. The story of a person's life is one of the most precious gifts that you can give to them. I'm going to give a story of my life to my grandchildren who are with me today. I have Alexandria with me, Arianna, and Michael. And I understand that they have some questions that they're going to ask me. So let's get started with my life story.
Tell us your life story, Grandma.
All right. We'll start with you, Alexandria. What's the first question you want to ask me?
How did you get to Louisiana?
My ancestors came from Mississippi. My immediate ancestors. My great-great-grandmother was born in Mississippi, and her daughter, Matilda, was brought to Louisiana by some white people that she lived with. She worked for them, and when they moved to Louisiana, they brought her with them. So that's how my immediate family got here in Louisiana.
Did you have any nicknames?
The nickname that my father gave me when I was growing up was Pumpkin. Now, don't anybody laugh, and I don't have a pumpkin face, but he used to call me Pumpkin as a nickname.
When you were little, where did you live, Grandma?
When I was little, I grew up in Ruston, Louisiana, on Mayberry Street, and I lived there for all of my life until I left home.
Tell me about your grandparents.
My grandparents, the only one that I knew of was Ruth McNeil. Ruth McNeil worked out in the fields with her parents. She was not educated. She could not read or write. And I asked her once, I said, why don't you go to school and get an education? She told me that she wanted to work in the fields. She didn't want an education. So times have changed now. Now we realize the value of having an education, but way back then, some thought the value of them working in the fields was all that they needed, which was a mistake.
Who are you besides my grandmother?
Who am I besides your grandmother? I am Liam's grandmother and Brooklyn's grandmother. I am Ashley's mother. I am Amy's mother, and your mommy. I'm her mother. Your mommy was my firstborn child. I'm also the wife of your grandpa Bob. I'm saying uncle. And I'm also the sister to, I have 3 sisters remaining, Betty, Catherine, and Virginia. So I'm also a sister as well. And I have lots of cousins.
Did you ever live in a house or an apartment?
We always lived in a house. As long as I can remember, we always lived on Mayberry Street in a house. We never moved around. That's exactly where we stayed.
Tell me about your parents, Grandma.
My parents were loving. They were business people. They had a little business in Ruston during that time, and it was called a motel. They used to rent rooms out to people. A lot of people in the Ruston area still remember Ferris Motel. I was considered like one of the wealthy kids in town. If you owned a business, they thought you had some money. And I guess we did for considering some of the families, but we were always able to buy the things that we wanted. And it was pretty much because they owned a business where they rented rooms out to people on a regular basis. I think at one time we had a total of like 25 rooms that were rented out. Okay.
What were your favorite TV shows growing up?
My favorite television shows. I enjoyed I Love Lucy. I enjoyed Andy of Mayberry. I used to watch the soaps all the time, but I got delivered from that. I used to watch Star Trek. I enjoyed Star Trek. Now, amazingly, I have never seen Star Wars, but I always enjoyed Star Trek. And there was one other show that I used to watch. It was kind of a horror show. It was called Dark Shadows. And it was scary. Somebody might remember Dark Shadows out there, but it was scary, and I would always be like, ugh. But I would watch it and still be afraid to go to bed at night.
So, what was your area like?
My area, we were living in the town of Ruston or in the city of Ruston. I can remember when our streets were not paved, when our streets were just dirt streets. I can remember when there were not street lights up and down the streets. But basically, it was a quiet neighborhood. I lived around people that we knew all of my life. I lived right down the street from my high school. In fact, I was 5 minutes away from my high school. I walked to my high school. Sometimes I even sneaked home on my lunch break to get a sandwich and go back to my high school because I would cut through a little trail to do something like that.
What about your siblings? How many did you have, and did you get along?
I got along with my siblings. There were a total of 6 of us. I had one brother and there were 5 girls. I was the youngest. I was the baby. And of course, I was spoiled a lot because they pretty much gave the baby, you're the baby in your family. And I think she's spoiled, right? So they pretty much gave me anything I wanted. Nobody picked on me because I was the youngest. But there were a total of 6 of us and one boy in the family.
What is your favorite day of the week?
My favorite day of the week back then was Saturday. And it was Saturday because I could watch cartoons, I could sleep in late, I didn't have to get up early to go to school. What's your favorite day of the week?
Saturday.
And what reason is it your favorite day of the week?
Because I only have to do one thing, which is guitar.
You only have guitar lessons on Saturday? All right, all right.
Did you ever move around a lot?
My family did not move around at all. We lived on Mayberry Street from the time I was in elementary school until the time I finished college and on to my career. In fact, my family was still living there when I got married. So we didn't move around. We stayed put when we got there.
What was the most trouble you got into?
I didn't get into a lot of trouble. I don't know if y'all get into a lot of trouble, but the worst thing that I can remember that I did, some friends of mine and I went to a neighbor's house one night when it was dark, and we stole some apples off of his apple tree. And of course it made us nervous because he opened his back door and said, "Who's that in my yard?" And we started running. But the worst thing that I can remember doing is maybe stealing some apples off of a neighbor's tree, and that was about it.
What is the best part of your current age?
The best part of my current age. I am 70 years old. Somebody could say I look younger. I don't want to see any snickers.
You look like 30.
Thank you, Arianna. She said I look 30. Anyway, I'm 70 years old, and the best part of being 70 years old is that I'm retired. I don't have to set a clock. I don't have to get up at any set time. I do get up early. I stay up late a lot of times, but that's the best part of it. I'm not on any kind of time schedule.
Were your parents strict?
My parents, I can't say that they were strict. I don't know if I said I was pretty much spoiled. They gave me pretty much whatever I asked them to give me. Now, as far as going places, I didn't go a lot of places. They didn't let me go out on dates. In fact, I really didn't want to go out on dates. But they weren't strict. If I asked for it, because I was a pretty good child. I mean, I did my homework. I did whatever my parents told me to do. I never got in any trouble. So pretty much if you're living that kind of way, and you do whatever your parents tell you to do, they pretty much will let you do whatever you want to do. But in fact, I didn't want to do anything other than what normal teenage kids would want to do.
What were you like in high school?
In high school, I was quiet. I believe I was well liked by most of my classmates. I think I was the teacher's pet. All of the teachers liked me. I did my homework. I was not a troublemaker. I never did anything to get in trouble. Whatever they asked me to do, I would do it. So I believe that I was well liked in high school.
How was your social life as a teenager?
My social life as a teenager, I didn't date, as I said that before. What we called a date back then is when your grandpa and I did get married, but a date for us when I was like 17 was that my mom would drop me off at the movie theater and he would meet me at the movie theater and we sat together. And after that, my mom would come and get me and take me back home. So as far as going out dating, I didn't do anything like that. I really had no desire to do anything like that. I did like high school activities where we had socials and danced after, certain games and stuff. But other than that, that's what my social life was like.
Tell me about your elementary school.
My elementary school days, I was a quiet little girl. I always say I'm quiet now, but a lot of people beg to differ that I'm not quiet. But I was very quiet. My teachers liked me a whole lot. I didn't do a lot of things other than just do what the teachers asked me to do. But basically, I was quiet, and even in elementary school, I believe I was a teacher's pet.
What were your favorite subjects?
My favorite subjects in school, particularly when I was in high school, was English and reading. I didn't really like math. I know you are a whiz at math, but I kind of pushed away from that. I could do it, but I liked reading more and I liked English more.
Did you have any popular hangouts?
Did I have any popular hangouts? No, because I didn't go anyplace. I didn't date. And back during that time, we just didn't hang out. Now, we could go to one another's house. My friends and I could stay on the street now. We could stay up to 10 or 10:30 at one of our friends' house. And then at 10:30, come on back home to your home. We had screen doors on our house where you could just lock it with a little hook. It was much safer back then. The parents were not as worried about us back then as parents are now. See, you can't stay out that late and be out with friends. Your parents want to know where you are at all times, but the times have changed. So as far as hanging out, we just didn't do that unless it was at a friend's house or they were at my house.
Did you ever take lessons like piano or dance lessons?
I don't even know if we had dance lessons back then. I'm not real sure. You're a dancer, aren't you? You dance all the time. I did take piano lessons, but I only got to the beginner's book, and then I stopped. And I really enjoyed it, but I just didn't continue it. Never even completed the first course. So I know just the very basics about the notes, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, or something like that, but no, I didn't complete anything.
How did you spend your summer vacation?
I spent my summer vacations in the community swimming pool. Every now and then my mom would let me have probably once every 3 months once every 3 weeks or 2 weeks. If I wanted to have a little dance at my house, we had a concrete slab right next to our house. And I would make tuna sandwiches and deviled eggs, and Mom would get punch and potato chips, and we'd invite all of my friends to come, and we'd stand out there and dance. But I was at home, so she could look out the door and watch over us. So that was what we did for the summer. We didn't go places to do anything. We did it at our homes, and we did it under the watchful eye of our parents.
How did you learn how to drive?
I learned how to drive with my mother. My mother used to put me in the car and let me go forward and backwards in the backyard. We had a huge backyard. And then after I got in high school, then I took driver's education.
Did you ever play sports?
I didn't play sports a lot because I had asthma when I was a child. And if I exerted myself, I would always get short-winded. My sister was the coach of a softball team, and I did play on the team. I did as much as I could, and I really enjoyed that. I was the first baseman on her softball team, and a lot of times I'd go home wheezing because I couldn't breathe. But as far as a lot of sports, I didn't get involved in that.
What are some places you've traveled to?
Some places that I've traveled to, I have been to Buffalo, New York. I have been to Washington, D.C., Orlando, Florida, Houston, Texas, San Antonio, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Los Angeles, California. I have never been out of the United States. That's not really a lot of places that I've been. I'm really not big on traveling. I just never have been. And if I did get a chance to go back someplace to visit, I would love to go back to Washington, D.C.
What kind of music did you listen to?
I listened to the music that was out during that time, and that was James Brown, Aretha Franklin. My daughters always tease me that you used to like Frankie Beverly and Mays. Oh, I love Frankie Beverly and Mays. But that was when I was older. So whatever was being played at that time, I danced, I enjoyed it, I listened to it. I had a stereo player, a phonograph, whatever it was called. I did all of that back then. I was a normal teenager.
What were your favorite books?
One of the favorite books that I can remember that I read all of the time was the Nancy Drew Detective Series. It was a series of books that had been out for a long time, and I love to read. I always like to find out what Nancy was going to do in the next edition of the book. So whenever my mom would go shopping or leave me at home, if I had finished one series in the book, I'd ask her to get me this one, get me this one. So that's the only one that comes to mind is the Nancy Drew series that I read.
Where was our mother born?
Your mother, my firstborn, the one that made me a mother, was born in Lake Charles, Louisiana. And when she was born, my mother came down to stay with me for a couple of weeks while I took care of my brand new baby, your mother.
What was going on in the world when you were a teenager?
Back in 1968, it was a very turbulent time. There was a lot of social unrest. There were a lot of protests about the Vietnam War. That was also the year that Martin Luther King was assassinated, and that was also the year that Robert Kennedy was assassinated. He was the nominee for the Democratic president, and he was assassinated that year. There was also a landmark decision, the 1968 Act, Civil Rights Act. And that was an act or an amendment that was added to the act that gave rights for people to be able to live wherever they wanted to live, regardless of what their color was. Because back in the day, we were restricted on where we could live. You couldn't live in certain areas. If you were a certain color or a certain race or a certain religion, they restricted you from being able to live where you wanted to live. Didn't matter if you had the money to pay for it. But that act was passed in 1968 that said no matter what your color was, you could live anywhere you wanted to live. If you were able to afford it, you could buy it and stay right there.
What games did you like to play?
Growing up, I played just the typical games, hopscotch. I never was big on, I know you children play chess. I don't know how to play that. But I know how to play checkers, I could play cards. When I was in college, we played cards a lot. And that's basically it. A lot of board games. I think there's one, I bet you all know how to play Monopoly. I've never really played Monopoly. So a lot of board games, I'm not familiar with them. Checkers, I'm okay. Domino, do you all know how to play dominoes?
A little bit, yes.
I can't play dominoes. I never could figure out how you did all the counting on those little dots. So I suppose the biggest game or the game that I played more than anything was a card game and checkers.
What was our mother like as a small child?
Your mother was a very quiet young lady, Adrian Brooks. Quiet. She didn't have to have a lot of friends to have fun. Adrian would spend time in her room by herself. She was a little shy. Now she's more outgoing now. But one thing about Adrian, she would fight. If you pushed her buttons the wrong way, she'd fight. Didn't matter if you were a girl or a boy, she would fight you. But basically, she was a quiet little girl, like her mama.
Did you pursue a career after college?
The career that I pursued after college, and I was blessed. Most people have to look for a job when they complete their college career. I was blessed that the career came looking for me. The government came looking for me and offered me a job. So I didn't have to go anywhere and put out any applications to get a job. They gave me a job with the government, the Social Security Administration, where I stayed for 31 years. And what I did there, I interviewed the public who were in to file for retirement benefits, disability benefits, Medicare benefits, and survivors benefits. So I stayed there 31 years and I retired at the age of 51.
What have you found to be the most important in your life?
The most important thing in my life is to seek after the Lord. We're supposed to love the Lord with all of our heart, our mind, our soul, and our strength, and love our neighbor as ourselves. And that's the most important thing that I am seeking at in this life right now, is to hunger after the things of God. And that's something that I want to instill in all of you. Hunger after the things of God. You know, we talk a lot about the word when you all are down here. When I come to Houston, Grandma's always going to pull out a song for us to sing or a Bible study. But if you don't remember anything about Grandma other than that, I want you to stay hungry for the things of God. Okay? All right.
Do one of us remind you of our mother?
I'm glad you asked me that question because you remind me of your mother. All right. This little one reminds me of my mother. She looks like my mother. And you look like your mother also. But you particularly look like her. You act like her. Y'all have the same mannerisms. So yes, indeed.
Where did you go to college and what was your major?
I went to college. At that time, it was called Grambling College. See that t-shirt you got on? I got those for you all. But it was called Grambling College. Now it's called Grambling State University. And my major back then was something we referred to as office administration. I wanted to be somebody's secretary when I finished. I don't know if that was a high aspiration, but that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be some boss's secretary to help him with his running the office. And guess what? That's exactly what I'm doing now. I'm helping Grandpa with the church. And a lot of the administrative part, or most of the administrative part, that's what I do. So God answers prayers. We may be asking it one way, but God knows what He wants to do to bless us.
What values do you cherish?
The values that I cherish right now, the particular one that I cherish is to walk in love with everyone, to be respectful of everyone. Everyone deserves our respect, and to hold everyone in the highest esteem. And that's the way God wants us to treat one another. There's too many people in this life who are disrespecting other people, and we don't want to do that.
Were you studious or the life of the party?
Was I studious or the life of the party? I was not the life of the party. I was studious. I loved to read. I always did. I still do. Didn't go many places, so no, I was not the life of the party.
Give me some words to live by Grandma.
Treat everyone you meet with love and kindness. Be respectful of everyone you meet. Hold them in the highest esteem. Treat people the way you want to be treated. Talk to people the way you want to be talked to. Don't do anything to deceive anyone or to lie to anyone. Let that be the way you live your life, and God will take you far.
When did you retire? Are you still working?
I retired when I was 51 years old. I work in the ministry of our church with Grandpa Bob, and we set our own hours here at home. We work late hours, but as far as working in a secular job, I'm not doing that.
What is the craziest story about yourself?
The craziest story about myself is the time my sister told me to jump off of our garage with an umbrella because it was a parachute and that it would hold me up. And it didn't hold me up. I hit the ground and my knee was bleeding. But she told me that I didn't jump right. So I did it a second time and I hit the ground again. And a third time she said, "You're not holding the umbrella right." So I tried it one more time, thinking it was a parachute, and it wasn't. I fell again. And then I realized this is not gonna let me float. So that's the craziest thing I've ever done.
Are you a risk taker?
Am I a risk taker? The answer to that would be no. If I think it's a risk involved in it, I'm not going to do it. Grandpa, what are you doing? You're gonna have to wait with that noise, baby. We're on the very end. Now this is the time you decide to go move the thing.
I'll move. I'll wait. I'll wait.
You came in on the video now. Tell me you'll wait.
I'll wait.
We have to
Okay. Okay.
So
Say that again.
Are you a risk taker?
I am not a risk taker. I don't take, if I think there's a risk involved, I'm not gonna do it. That's just the way I've always led my life and probably the way I'll go out. I'm not gonna take a risk. Grandpa Bob likes to say, what is the term he says? I'm squared away. He uses that term all the time about being squared away, so I'm pretty much squared away. Are we done?
Yes.
Yes, we're done.
All right. I want to thank you all for letting me tell you my life story. There is a renowned poet by the name of Maya Angelou who once said, "You can tell people something and they might forget, or you can do something and they might forget that, but they will never forget how you made them feel." So I hope I've made you feel pretty special, because you made me feel special today, asking me questions about my life story. And I thank all of you for doing that. I love you. And can I get a group hug?
Yeah.
Stand up and let everybody see your GS shirt. Stand up, stand up, stand up, stand
Shout out to Grambling.
up. Shout out to Grambling. I would, if I could change the world for my grandchildren, I would certainly do it. But I would never change my grandchildren for the world.
And one last word. Like and subscribe.
Subscribe to what?
Your channel.
Okay, God bless you.
Yeah.